Hey, it's Kaero. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are generating and rating artificial intelligence magic cards powered by Urzas A.I. The rating scale is 0, absolutely unplayable, and 10, a massive bomb. If you like the video, please hit that thumbs up, consider subscribing for future episodes, and without further ado, let's go. Okay, the first card we have is Rise of the Eldrazi. Okay. One green, two generic for an instant. Choose one. Creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn, or destroy target creature with flying. And the flavor text is from that moment, I refuse to let any lesser angel choke my line. Cedrus Erebos Peer Joval Officer. Okay. So it's a 3 mana green instant that buffs all your creatures temporarily +1/+1 or destroys target creature with flying, like Broken Wings. Sideboard card. Usually you see that +1/+1 in red, but it's kind of cool to see it in green. But Rise of the Eldrazi means that this card, because it made me laugh so hard, is 10 out of 10. But realistically, it's probably like a 3 out of 10 for play. Next, we have Bulwark Hierarchic Conditioner. 1 blue, 3 generic for a zombie wizard, 2/2 flying. As a 4-drop, not unheard of, not super bad. Ability 1 blue, 2 generic for sacrifice Bulwark Hierarchic Conditioner. Target creature gets -2/-0 until end of turn. Alright, so this is right up the alley of blue. Blue has this kind of minus power until end of turn thing that it has, usually in form of instants. But I guess this is not unplayable. It's a 4-drop, 2/2 flying that can get some damage in. And then it's on the field. Your opponent has to wonder if you're going to sacrifice it. The only thing is it takes 3 mana to sacrifice it to do this effect. If it was just sacrifice it without paying any mana, it would be sort of like maybe a 4. But paying that much to do that, not even killing anything, it's a 1. What's the flavor? Some feeder pigeons purr, others call to the clouds. All right. So, yeah, it's going to be a 1 on Bulwark Hierarchic Conditioner. Here we have Grizzly Presence. 1 black, 3 generic for an instant. Devoid, so this card has no color, which is something that we see on Eldrazi. But this is not a black spell because it has Devoid. And draw a card. So you can draw 1 card for 4 mana at instant speed. That's going to be a no for me. This is a 1. The flavor text it is it has no thought. Nizumi Tumatsu, that he drinks in the market. So somebody's drinking in the market. Is that the Grizzly presence that we're talking about? Some guy in the market drinking? 4 mana draw card. It's a no for me. It's a 1. Next up is Aven Combatant. It's 1 white, 3 generic for a bird soldier. It's a 2/2 flyer. When Aven Combatant enters the battlefield, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. These cards are typically pretty good and limited. This won't see any constructed play basically in any format other than maybe like Pauper if it's a common. What's the flavor text? It has never known the full range of a sword. Alright. Never needed a sword. It's a bird soldier. Uses its talons. 4-drop, 2/2 flying buffs another thing. Good and aggressive decks. For limited only, I'm going to say it's probably like a 5 or a 6. Wouldn't see constructed play. Next, we have Mitchell Sojourners. 1 blue, 1 generic for a human advisor. So, human's a relevant creature type. 1 power, 1 toughness. Tap, draw a card. Okay. The flavor text is the rest of the information was ignored. Alright, so it's a 2-drop creature that just taps to allow you to draw a card. If it's not dealt with, that means basically just 1 extra card per turn. You can also activate this at instant speed, so you can, if you're really under pressure, you could block with this. Tap it to draw a card, get some value out of it before it dies. I think this is good. I think this is probably an 8. It's very easily killed, but it's an 8. Here we have Diminish. 1 blue, 2 generic. I love the name already. It's an instant exile target creature with power 2 or less. For blue, this is pretty off color. In the color pie, we'd expect something like this to be white, maybe black, and red would have damage base removal. So for blue, If you're playing like in Commander, something where you could only have access to blue cards, it's better than if you were playing in black. You would want or white. Much better removal than this. So 3 cost, it exiles creatures power 2 or less. Typically, we don't want to be limited to power 2 or less. If we're paying 3 mana, we typically want to pay 1, maybe 2 for that. Um, but being in blue, it's going to be a little bit higher rating than it would be in white or black. And the flavor text is: the truth is, the gremlins are driven by an insatiable hunger. They never cease finding more prey to exploit. Okay, blue gremlins are finding prey to exploit. I'm going to say if this was black or white, this would be like a 3. Since it's blue, I'm going to say it's about a 4. Next up, we have Rakdos Octopus, and I can already tell it's blue. So it's 1 blue, 4 generic for an octopus creature. It's a 2/2. Whenever Rakdos Octopus deals damage to a player, you may sacrifice it. If you do, Rakdos Octopus deals 3 damage to each creature blocking it. Wait, so it has to attack, it has to be blocked, and still deal damage to a player? And then you can sacrifice it to deal 3 damage to each creature blocking it. So it has to have trample then, right? Because the only way that it would deal damage to a player when blocked is if it had trample. But then if it dealt damage to a player because it had trample, that meant that it already killed everything that was blocking it. So you can't even equip like a ping artifact on this thing and deal damage to a player and then sacrifice it, because then it wouldn't be blocked. So I think I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say this ability actually cannot ever be used. I see no scenario where it can be used. What's the flavor? Rakdos Octopus was built to be a problem for its intended audience. It is a problem. I'm the intended audience, and it is a problem for me. I'm glad that it was built to be a problem. That reassures me that I'm not insane, because I do find it to be quite a problem. I'm going to rate it as a 2/2 5-drop that the ability can't be used. I'm going to give it a 1. Here we have Geist Flame Entrancer. 1 red, 2 generic for a spirit. That's a relevant creature type. 2/2 for 3, okay. When Geist Flame Entrancer enters the battlefield, flip a coin. If you lose the flip, you gain control of target creature for as long as you control Geist Flame Entrancer. Wait, so we want to lose the flip? What happens if we win? Nothing? So you win, you get the benefit of being like, I won that flip. And then the opponent goes, well, what does that mean? You're like, well, nothing, but I won. But then if you lose, you're like, aha, I'm a loser. I get your 7-drop. Till you get rid of Geist Flame and Trancer. Alright, cool. I like that. That seems very red to me. It's like, get this in there. If you lose, whatever. Flavor text is: when it emerges, it becomes as hot and blindingly bright as it was a moment before. So it's hot and blindingly bright, and then it emerges, and it's like, I'm still blindingly bright. What's up? I'm gonna give this. I mean, the potential is pretty decent on this. It's a 3-drop 2/2. So if you don't gain control of something, it's not the absolute end of the world. I'm gonna give this like a 5. Next, we have Burning Seed. 1 red, 1 generic for sorcery. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, Burning Seed deals 3 damage to any target. That's actually really cool flavor text for something in Gruul. We've had a lot of green creatures or effects that say if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, X effect happens. And it's cool to see that. So if you could place these in those decks that care about having a power 4 or greater creature, but at the same time, the payoff is not good. It's 2 mana for 3 damage, and it's conditional. So Lightning Bolt is 1 red for 3 damage, and that is it's a fantastic card. It's the GOAT. But paying 2 mana for 3 damage to any target is typically where we want to be at without the prerequisite of having to have a big creature. What's the flavor text? 1 that contains the seed remains a forest. So it's even referencing green in here, referencing a forest. That's a cool thing done by the AI. And the art is awesome as well. As far as the card seeing play, I think it's absolutely a 1. There's removal that does 3 damage for 2 out there already. Here we have Silt Crawler. 1 blue, 4 generic for a zombie, which is really a relevant creature type. 3 power, 2 toughness, and has flash. When it enters the battlefield, tap target creature and opponent controls. So really there are 2 ways that you can do this. You can do this pre-combat on the opponent's turn to tap down their biggest attacker, and then it remains tapped so you can swing in on them next turn. Or you can play it on your turn, tap something down to get something through. It's a little bit underpowered for 5. What's the flavor text? Once a nightmare dies, that nightmare has learned its name. Wow. Um, I think this would see some play in limited. Definitely not for constructed, but having a deck that was kind of built around this and tempo and being able to take advantage of this flash effect, tapping down their biggest thing, I think it would probably be like a 5. Here's a blue card, Primus Whirlwind. 1 blue, 1 generic for a human wizard. Both good creature types at 1/1. Tap 1 blue, 2 generic, and tap this creature. Put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. How do I feel about this? Paying 2 for a creature and being able to do that multiple times if it's not removed seems okay. But the thing about this is you're putting it on top of your library, so you're stopping yourself from drawing cards, which really kind of hurts. Now, if this was 1 blue, 2 generic, tap it, put it in back into your hand, that would be really something. But I don't know that we want to do that and stop, because you're basically paying mana to get back like a really powerful creature. But how many of those do you have in your deck, right? You're not going to want to tap 3 mana to get back your 1 drop or 2 drop, really. And it can't be card, it can only be a creature card, so you can't get like an instant or sorcery back. I think it's probably a 3. If it went back to your hand, it could see maybe being like a 4 or a 5. Or if it was all card types, maybe a little bit higher than that. What's the flavor text? The blaze that sparked the Goblins' War was followed by one flame that did not, and I had no idea why. None of us do Primus Whirlwind. It's okay. Yeah, it's gonna be like a 3, maybe, I don't know, maybe even a 2. Another blue card, Fairy Tale Pillage. 1 blue, 1 generic. I feel like this is from Eldraine with the Fairy Tale thing. It's an instant for 2 mana. Put target artifact or creature on top of its owner's library. It's pretty powerful actually for 2 mana, especially if it targets a large creature or a really large artifact or a high mana value artifact that they had to invest a lot in. We're talking like mana value 5, 6, 7, something like that. Put it on top of their library. You deny them another card to draw because they're going to be drawing that back to their hand. Then they have to re-spend all that mana to cast it. It's kind of situational because you don't want something that's huge that hasn't entered the battlefield effect that they get another chance to activate that. But it's a fairly big tempo play, and at only 1 more mana than a typical unsummon effect, and it goes to the top of the library, not to the hand. I think this card's quite good. I think it's probably a 7. What's the flavor text? Once 1,000 lifetimes. What do you expect from me? um, yeah, I think it's a 7, maybe higher than that. In certain formats, I could see where this would be actually even better than just straight up removal if they have a way to interact with the graveyard. Next up is Nightmare Engine, our first colorless card of the evening. 2 colorless mana for an artifact creature horror at 2/2. When Nightmare Engine enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard. I thought it was going to say into your hand, then shuffle. And for 1 black, interesting, 2 generic, Nightmare Engine gains flying until end of turn. So this could be played for sure in Reanimator decks. This is a Reanimator deck's dream, is to have a cheap creature on turn 2 that puts whatever their target is right into the graveyard. You can search your entire library for whatever you want to put in there and then reanimate it later. I originally thought that it said search your library for a card, put it into your hand, and I was like, this is an absolute 10. This is insane that it can be played in every deck. But even in the graveyard, it's still very good. And then it has this little ability here that it gains flying until end of turn. Not likely that you'll use that a lot, but hey, if you're trying to get some damage in and they're slow or they don't have a lot of lands or whatever, I mean, you could do that, especially in the later game. The flavor text is it fools those who see it, but it kills those who don't. That's actually very, very relevant here. And so interesting. It fools those who see it, but kills those who don't. So, to an inexperienced player, you play Nightmare Engine and put a big creature in your graveyard. And then people that don't see that, right? They say, why did they do that? That makes no sense. You get killed if you don't know that the Nightmare Engine is going to help you reanimate a big thing. That is creepy, actually, how accurate that flavor text is. I think for Reanimator decks, this is an easy 8 out of 10, maybe 9 out of 10. Generally speaking, 7, because you could still get something even without reanimating, something that has a clause on itself, like exile it from the graveyard and have some effect or something like that. So I think it's generally a 7, maybe an 8. Next up, a white card, Vessel of Glory. 1 white, 1 generic for a human rebel. 2/2. And it has flying. So it's a 2 mana, 2/2 flying. That's very good. Then it also has this ability 1 white, 2 generic, sacrifice Vessel of Glory, destroy target artifact or enchantment. This card's pretty good. So in an aggressive deck, just having a 2/2 flyer that you can maybe put counters on and just let it kind of smash is good on curve. So, and then having the sacrifice it, destroy target artifact or enchantment, it does cost 3 mana, but maybe later, turn 5, turn 6, you have other creatures on the board. They play something, a problematic enchantment for maybe 5 or 6 mana, and then you're ahead still by sacrificing this thing. So I'm going to give this probably an 8. What's the flavor text? Some metal has found a home on a giant's body. Well, sometimes that does happen. Sometimes a giant, adorns its body with metal. It finds a home. It's nice. What are you going to do? Yeah, this is probably an 8.